tonight's talk is on a Buddhist approach to love, actually. So we're going to, from now on in the retreat, we're going to be talking about love. And I know there's lots of different ways that we understand love. And sometimes love has a very dark side as well. For many people, love is highest value. Love is what it's all about. Love gives meaning to life. It's why we're here, because of love, what love means to us. But you must agree that there's a dark side of it too, when it gets twisted and it changes to lust, or it gets mixed up with jealousy and bitterness and dependency, like codependency, like dependency, like that. And there's been a lot of violence in the name of love as well. So, love is a word that most people use. In the Buddhist sense, it is about letting go, actually. Love is mostly about letting go, and also cultivating four qualities. The four qualities that I've been calling the heart qualities here: loving kindness, compassion, appreciative joy, or sometimes called empathetic joy or sympathetic joy, sometimes called altruistic joy, and equanimity, or kind of steadiness. So I'll talk a little bit about the four heart qualities to give it an overview. And tonight we'll go into talking more about equanimity. But traditionally, the way, and tomorrow night we'll talk about loving kindness or metta, and then the next night compassion, and the last night we'll be talking about appreciative joy. And traditionally, it goes in the traditionally way these four heart qualities are presented are loving kindness first, compassion, then mudita or appreciative joy, and then equanimity. But we're going to be talking about equanimity mostly first tonight, because I think equanimity is the king of these heart qualities, in that it balances them, and it's good to have a sense of balance. And also because the way our retreat's been running, where we've talked about insight and then serenity, it's probably the most appropriate quality to talk about right now in the sequence of our retreat. So, the four heart qualities. I'll just give you a brief overview of them all at the moment. So loving kindness, otherwise known as, I like to call it warm friendliness, because that's more what how it's translated. It comes from the word, we use the word metta, and it's useful to understand that word. That word comes from the root mit, which in Thai means friend. Friendship is mittaphat, and kwam mit is also friendship. Mit kong pong is my friend. So mit pong, that means my friend. So we have this root word, this root mit, and it turns into metta, which is this quality of warm friendliness. It's based on, it is the wish for happiness for oneself and others, basically. It is that uplifted sense of connection with another. And it's based on happiness. Compassion is a little bit different. for your information, it's called karuna in Pali. Compassion is still about being connected with another, but the focus of compassion, is more on suffering, and it's the wish to alleviate it. So there's lots of definitions of compassion around. Compassion, currently, I think compassion is becoming the new mindfulness in terms of popularity and in research and investigation and attraction to psychotherapies and so on. So there's quite a lot of research going on about compassion-focused treatments and so on. Now, mudita, and I'm using the Pali word there, or appreciative joy, is the appreciation or gratitude, the appreciation of one's own or another's good qualities, one's own or another's achievements, virtues, skills, and so on. So, mudita, or appreciative joy, I'm just saying mudita because it's easier to say, I hope you don't mind. I'll say it many times, Bill. So anyway, this is this quality of joy with another's successes, or even your own successes. Another way I describe it is gratitude. It's like that sense of feeling uplifted by something that someone else's qualities or whatever someone else has done for you. So that's mudita. And the last quality is equanimity. And just briefly, and I'll give you more details in a minute. Equanimity is an unshakability. It is this state of mind that is unshaken by the vicissitudes of life. It's sort of, it's flexible, it's stable, it's resilience, it's this unwavering, steady, centered, stable state of mind that isn't shaken around or blown around by changes in life. And later on I'll talk about something called the 8 worldly winds, which are, I'll tell you now, praise and blame, loss and gain or success, failure and success or loss and gain, pain and pleasure, and fame and disrepute, or notoriety and nothingness, or social acceptance and social rejection. These are called the 8 worldly winds because they blow us around. Equanimity is kind of stable in that. Sort of sees things as they are. So these hard qualities, they have what we call in Buddhism both near and far enemies. What I mean by that is that there are the direct opposites of these qualities and also false facsimiles of them, or false representations of them. So we have loving kindness, which is this warm wish for happiness, being able to see the good and beautiful in someone else and yourself. The opposite of that, or the far enemy of that, is hatred, bitterness, resentment. That sort of strong aversion. Yeah. That's the opposite. The near enemy, however, which is the false facsimile of it, is sort of distortions of love, like subservient adoration, or conditional love, or sort of dependent attachment on someone else or something. It's like there's something really sticky about it. It's not very comfortable. So the near and far enemies of compassion, the far enemy, of course, is cruelty, sadism, masochism, and downright the opposites of compassion. And the near enemies are like what we call compassion fatigue, I think. When people get overwhelmed with the miseries in the world and they feel totally burnt out and fatigued. Or another near enemy is like rescuing people. You know how people can't stand to see someone suffering, so they go and rescue them all the time. What they're not standing is, in fact, their own aversion to seeing the suffering or their own discomfort. So I'll talk more about this on Wednesday night. But just to give you an overview, and the near and far enemies of mudita, or this appreciative joy, the far enemy of it is the far enemy is like jealousy and envy. And if it's about yourself, it's like a sort of cynicism, like a denial of your own good qualities, or being cynical about those qualities. These are the far enemies. The near enemies are kind of interesting. The near enemies are a kind of nauseating positivism. I think people know what I mean by nauseating positivism. Sometimes you see, people that are just smiling all the time, and they're saying, "Snap out of it, put on a happy face. Got no reason to worry. Everything's all going good." I heard World War's about to happen, or Donald Trump gets put into place. It's okay. Put on a happy face. Always things are getting better and better when, in fact, sometimes they're not. This kind of like a Pollyannaism. I mention this often when I talk about the inner enemy of mudita, but I've never read Pollyanna, but I know a little bit about the story. She was a character in a novel, I think, and she was constantly positive. That's correct. I see a few. The people I can see, they're nodding. I can't see all you guys over there behind the light. Anyway, so all these qualities are balanced nicely by equanimity. And can you excuse me a minute? I just need a drink. I'll turn the sound off so you don't hear the big gulp. Or if you do hear the big gulp, you're wonderfully equanimous about it. Driven by your deep compassion for Malcolm's thirst. It's a little bit more of a challenge to have this big bright light on my face, but it's not quite like talking on a conference where you don't get any feedback, but it's sort of similar. And then I can't see people's expressions out there so well. Okay. The term for equanimity in Pali is upekkha. And again, I'm not a Pali scholar, but I think you know by now that I like using Pali words. The reason I like to use them is because they're the language of meditation. They're the language that I learned from meditation. And the way they unpack describes qualities and practices quite succinctly, quite comprehensively. So I'm going to refer to the word upekkha here. And it means to look over. It refers to the power of observation, the ability to see without being caught up by what we see. And when well developed, it gives a sense of peace. So that's pretty cool. And apparently in India they use it colloquially. And sometimes it's used to mean to see with patience. To see with patience. Or to see with understanding. And this is getting closer to what we mean by equanimity. And there's another word that they use in Pali, and I hope I can pronounce it correctly here. I'm sure I haven't written it correctly because sometimes there's little diacritics. Diacritics are little, for those of you who don't know, they're little kind of squiggles and lines and different things above letters. Give it a different, give the letter a different quality. And I've written it here without any diacritics, so I'm not sure if I'm going to pronounce it correctly. But sometimes this word is also translated as equanimity. Tatra majjhatata. I'll say it again. Tatra majjhatata. And it's really cool to break this word down. So I'm going to break it down. Tatra, I think, means there. Sometimes also refers to all these things. Majja means middle. And tata means to stand or pose, to stand. So put together, the word becomes to stand in the middle of all this. To stand in the middle of all this. In the form of being in the middle. And I know this is relevant for me. Sometimes I'm feeling quite peaceful and I walk out into the world and there's so much stuff happening, or I've just become aware of what's going on in the world. There's so much chaos and you feel like this centered in the middle of all this crazy stuff that's happening. And I remember seeing a movie that I can't remember what it was called, but it was this movie documentary. It just played music all the time, and they started with the snow monkeys in Japan, and in hot springs and in the snow, and just went around different beautiful shots with lovely music, and it just went on and on and on. And there was one scene that the film was sped up, but there was a Zen monk walking down a Tokyo street, and he was just walking like this, like seemed like a slow pace, and everyone was just going, passing him all around. They'd obviously sped the film up, and he was just walking really slow, and he was just ringing a bell, like every now and then. So he was walking really slow, but it just seemed like he was walking really slow. To me, that gets that sense, even though he's not standing, he's kind of still in the middle of it all, still in the chaos of everything. So this is getting close to, well, it's describing what we mean by equanimity. So equanimity refers to this sense of balance. It comes from inner strength and stability. It's a strong presence of inner calm, well-being, confidence, resilience, a sense of being upright, upright morally and with our virtues as well. And sometimes it's been referred to the ballast of the ship, you know how ballast of a ship goes down and sort of goes into the water and keeps it balanced. It's sometimes been referred to like that. And so, did I tell you the near and far enemies of equanimity yet? That one? No. I told you the near and far enemies of the other. Did I talk about the near and far enemies of equanimity? Okay.
You told us what they were. You tell us.
No, I told you what the loving kindness, compassion, appreciative joy, but I haven't told you the near and far enemies of equanimity. The near and far enemies of equanimity, well, the far enemy are kind of being unstable, being emotionally reactive, sort of taking things personally, being overreactive, sort of being moved around, destabilised easily. This is the near enemy of equanimity. This is the direct opposite of equanimity. Getting caught up in everyone's stories, for example. The far enemy, did I say far enemy or near enemy before? Far enemy, okay. The near enemy of equanimity, is a false facsimile of equanimity. It's a false representation. It is this kind of cut off, disengaged aloofness. It's like this kind of feeling very detached, but actually you're in denial, I think. It's this, I've seen this with some people when they first get into Buddhism, actually. They first get into Buddhism, they get really engaged in it, and and they go away and they have their 7-year relationship or their 10-year relationship with someone, they break it off with them because they're going a bit weird, and they just say, "Oh, I'm cool with it all. I'm unshaken by it." Really, they're in denial. I mean, if my 7-year, I'm just thinking of someone actually. Someone who I've been with for 7 years. I've been with my partner for over 30 years now. But even if I had only been with her for 7 years, if she said, "Oh, I don't want to have anything to do with you," I wouldn't be I'd be upset, I think. I'd be, shaken around a bit. Anyway, this near enemy is like pretending to be calm, cool and collected, but it's actually not genuinely like that. So equanimity. Equanimity is a quality of mind that remains centered without inclining towards extremes. That's Sayadaw Pandita, who was one of my teachers, who passed away last year, I think. It is a quality of non-attachment, even-mindedness, non-discrimination, of letting go. And I'm quoting Thich Nhat Hanh there. And according to others, and I think I'm quoting Sharon Shalsberg and Joseph Goldstein here, equanimity is the spacious stillness of mind that provides the foundation for the other sublime states. The 4 heart qualities are also called the 4 sublime states. Some other words for these 4 heart qualities, just to kind of digress a little bit. In Pali, they're called the 4 Brahma Viharas. Brahma in Pali means kind of God or divine. Vihara means dwelling place. Interesting in Thai, Vihan is a place, is a kind of like a hall like this. Anyway, 4 Brahma Viharas, 4 divine abodes, as often they're known, because they're nice places to hang out in. They're divine, they're uplifting, they're uplifted qualities. Other words for them are sublime states, the 4 heart qualities. In Tibetan Buddhism, I think they're called, well, I know they're called the 4 immeasurables because they're beyond measure, they're expansive and they have no boundaries. Or the 4 boundless states, in the sense of being expansive, but also breaking away boundaries that we have with others. So, coming back to equanimity, equanimity is a wisdom quality. It's understanding that each and every individual are on their own life trajectory, is on their own life trajectory. They are the owners of their own decisions. They all make decisions in life. They are the owners of their own decisions. The other night I was talking about how they're, the second truth. Remember the second truth that I spoke about on the first night? The second truth is the cause of suffering, and or the cause of dukkha. And I think I described it as the cause of suffering is, or the cause of dukkha is related to a whole bunch of things coming together. And I would have probably mentioned, like our genes, our past history, our social upbringing, particular experiences we've had in life, like traumas or, wonderful experiences. All these things coming together, the fact that we're human and we have emotions, the fact that we've been brought up in quite a peaceful country, for example, like in Australia, for some of us. All these things coming together, many things of which we have absolutely no control over. I've got a genetic mutation. It's called, I'll see if I can get it right. Methylene tetrahydroreductase. Is that right? No. Oh, sorry. No, I said it wrong. Methylene hydrofolate reductase. I think that's it. MTHFR for short. I've got a particular mutation there, and I got it from my parents. I'm homozygous for it, so I got it from both my parents. It makes me 70% more likely, like the risks of coronary heart disease, cancer, developing a mental illness, and a whole range of other things. I have absolutely no control over that. I mean, that's just what I've got. And this is the way it is. So I work with it. So all these things come together. Life is a whole range of circumstances come together. But there's a kind of a fraction of the capacity to work with it. And that's our decisions of what we do, the way we respond to the things that come our way. And this is where the root causes of suffering lie. As I said earlier, the other night, when we respond to things with greed, ignorance or hatred, then it's likely that the long-term outcomes will be leading towards dukkha, or feeding into dukkha. When we can respond with wisdom, when we can respond with kindness and generosity and open-heartedness, compassion and so on, when we can respond with kind of generosity or letting go, then the likely outcomes will be more likely to be those of freedom, reduction of suffering in the long term. So, equanimity understands this. Equanimity understands that each and every individual are on their own life trajectories, that they are the owners of their own decisions. They are the owners of their own actions, basically. They are heir to their actions, born of their actions. In that sense, I mean, they're born on a day-to-day basis, like every day I wake up, I'm born. Every moment I'm born, it's largely dependent on things that have come before, Also, my decisions from the day before. How I am right now is the result of my various decisions and intentions from yesterday. And the way I will be is a result of what I'm deciding to do now. In fact, somebody asked the Buddha one day, can you tell me the future? I want to know what's happening to me in the future. And the Buddha said, I don't need to tell you that. You know what's going to happen in the future. You can tell. You can know the future by knowing now. The future is dependent on what you're deciding to do right now. And if you want to know the past, look at what's happening right now. You are the result of all those decisions in the past. You can see that this comes about through wisdom, can't you? You know, we've been practicing mindfulness, we've been practicing serenity and samadhi, concentration, and we've been travelling on the Eightfold Path. Travelling on that Eightfold Path gives rise to wisdom. And it is with wisdom that we can change the directions in our lives from one of moving down the dark, descending, miserable path of dukkha, or moving out towards awakening, waking up to the dream, waking up to this experience and seeing it for what it is, and ultimately being free from dukkha. So equanimity is this quality. If someone starts to blame you for things that are happening to them, then with equanimity you clearly see, well, that's just not my story. It's your issue. In Thai, again, I know that often Thais would say, there's a saying, oh, Rung Kong Khao, it's their story. It's not my story, it's their story. So I often rely on equanimity when I'm in my practice as a psychologist. People will come up and insult me sometimes. I've been assaulted at times. I've had my tooth cracked one time by someone assaulting me, punching me. There's been people say lots of nasty things. Sometimes people come and sack me. Like I might see them for a bit. And they say, oh, you're a terrible psychologist. And they sack me. So, you know, I investigate and I look into what I've done to, you know, to do that. And in my heart, I know that it's not really my issue, you know. I mean, I'm sure there's some things that I've done that I could do differently. But it's their story, it's their projections, it's their interpretations, it's their own stuff. Other times, and this used to happen when I was a shiatsu therapist for many years, massage therapist. I used to do a pretty good shiatsu too. And anyway, some people would come along and say, oh, that was the best massage I've ever had. You're such a good masseuse. You're the best. You're the best. And I go, oh yeah, all right. I'd be very cautious about that because I know in the next week they'll go to see someone else and they'll be the best. So I realised that, you know, people, the way they think is their story. Of course we have part involvement in that, but their life trajectories, I can't actually influence them. I can influence them. I can't actually change their life trajectories. Only they can change their life trajectories. Does that make sense? Those of you who've been on groups with me, you might have heard this joke. I remember some of you have been on groups with me. And it's usually the way I start the discussion about equanimity. And it goes, how many psychologists does it take to change a light bulb? I think, did we say that joke the other day? Oh my God, I'm mixing up my groups now. How many psychologists does it take to change a light bulb? Anybody know?
Depends on...
Huh?
You do it.
You know, you've heard this joke before, haven't you?
It's a meeting, Malcolm.
You're going to leave it up to me, okay. It doesn't really matter, but the light globe has to really want to change. Okay. And there was a really, I've said this so many times, but I don't think I've said it in this group. My memory's going a bit here, but there's a really lovely joke that I saw. It's about, it was just a cartoon. And it was in a psychiatrist's office. And there was all the diplomas of psychiatry and, you know, all these therapies that this person had qualified in around the walls. And there was a lounge, you know, a laid-back lounge, like, you know, the Freudian analysis type lounge. And then there was a patient in the lounge. And the psychiatrist, actually the caption underneath it says, brief interactive therapy. And the psychiatrist is standing over the person going, snap out of it. So it's kind of like an example of really, you know, if that worked, if we could tell people to change, I wouldn't have much of a job, to be honest. People change because I asked them to change, they wouldn't change. I mean, if they changed because I asked them to change, then they wouldn't come back. It'd be one-off therapy. However, I notice people come back, because people don't change because I want them to change. People change from their own initiative, from their own impetus. They change because of their own stories, their own decisions, their own motivations, their own travelling on the path of, you know, developing wisdom and making firm intentions and acting in accordance with those intentions, and then cultivating their mind and being mindful and developing concentration, their own wisdom growing. Now, it's a little bit to do with me in that I'm making the circumstance appropriate from, but it's their story. So equanimity understands that. So when people do come and insult you, or say something about you, or look at you with a weird look, or whatever they do, then it's easier to let it kind of slide on past. It's easier to not take it personally. To not take insults personally. Because only you can be the real judge of who you are. Does that make sense? Equanimity. And I did talk about the 8 worldly winds. The 8 worldly winds are these 4 sets of opposite circumstances that destabilise our sense of emotional balance. Praise and blame, loss and gain, failure and success, I'm calling that loss and gain, pain and pleasure, praise and blame, loss and gain, pain and pleasure, and fame and disrepute, or social rejection and social acceptance. I was saying before that I used to see a lot of young people. Every time, when I was like teenagers, they would come with all sorts of issues. But the biggest thing was what others were thinking about them. For adolescents, as you might remember, it was really important to get along with our peers. Remember that? Anybody remember being an adolescent? I think I can. It was really important to be accepted in our peers. And in fact, as adults, it's very important for us to get accepted by our peers. We're hardwired to be part of a tribe, to be connected with the tribe, because as I explained, I think it was on the first night, that it's dangerous for us to be rejected. So we take the way other people think about us it's very important for us. We want to stay connected with the tribe. Yet equanimity is able to see that this is the way of the world. There's always going to be this type of praise and blame, loss and gain. There's always going to be success and failure. A couple of weeks ago, was it a couple of weeks ago? Yeah, only a couple of weeks ago, I was getting ready to go to Brisbane to run a workshop. And I've done a workshop up there at our centre up there several times. It's really great. I just go in there, I don't do any of the arrangements. Someone else is taking care of the bookings. Someone else is taking care of the money. Someone else has got the venue organised. I just go in there and do the workshop. It's really cruisy. That's what I really like doing this stuff. I rang up 2 days before. How's it going? Oh no, we never know. You know, there's going to be, sometimes people book in at the last moment. Okay, I'll ring up on Thursday. It's going to be starting on Saturday. I'll ring up on Thursday. Malcolm, there's 2 people booked in. Is it worth me going to Brisbane? I thought, I don't think it's worth me going to Brisbane. We're going to cancel it. So there's a feeling of failure. You know, other times I've been up there, 20 people are booked in, or, you know, great success, everyone loves it. This time, 2 people. You feel, oh, what have I done wrong? I know one time I cancelled a workshop because I was kind of needing to look after myself, and the universe must have picked up on that. And nobody booked into my workshop because they knew that I need to take care of myself. But this time, I'm really energised, I'm really motivated to go and run this workshop, but nobody booked in. So anyway, it's easy to feel a failure. Anybody feel a failure here, by the way? Yeah? It's easy to feel a failure. And it's easy to get intoxicated with success. It's easy to kind of feel far out. Things are really going for me now. I'm on a roll. And then for that to kind of tumble and crawl and fall and, you know, what's that saying? The mat gets taken, what is it? The rug gets pulled away from your feet. Is that what that was the saying? Something like that. These things, these vicissitudes of life are part of life. Everyone is part of this. Equanimity is this kind of wise old grandfather or grandmother seeing life like this. You know the wise old grandmother or the wise old grandfather, having lots of experience, seeing the ups and downs of life, and sitting back and saying, well, this is just the way it is. So, how do we cultivate equanimity? I think equanimity is often the place we have to go when we're confronted with lots of difficulties. And I remember the other night I was talking to you about how I was a monk in Thailand and I got malaria, and then the year later I got hepatitis A. There was a lot of suffering. I really thought that I wasn't going to survive. But I was kind of determined to stay there because, you know, I'd set my intention, I really wanted to stick with it. It was actually ultimately my body, my physical illness, and going a little bit, kind of getting a little bit unbalanced was essentially what inspired me or motivated me to this road. But anyway, when I was a young monk and I was there, and the days were just, we'd go down to Pindapat in the morning at just as the sun was coming up, go down to the local village, come back, clean up, go back to a hut. And I was in a cave, kind of a cave, it was an open cave, and I just used to do walking backwards and forwards in the cave. Then at 3 o'clock in the afternoon we'd come down, we'd sleep, and we'd have a drink. And I was telling you about how sometimes I would get chocolate, remember that? Was that you groups? Yeah. And then we'd just go back. Sometimes there'd be an evening talk, and sometimes everyone would come up from the village and we'd sit all night on full moon. And some days, twice a month, we didn't, or was it once a month? Can't remember now. We didn't have to go to the village because the village came to us. And on that night, often they would stay all night and we'd meditate. So it's a pretty, you know, it's only 21, 22, 23, pretty boring life, you know. People say to me, that must have been really interesting. It was really interesting, but it was really kind of a lot of struggle as well. I mean, I wasn't speaking to anybody very much. I had to learn Thai I would have put a lot of effort into learning Thai. But there wasn't much conversation. Every now and then I'd say a few things to the teacher, and he'd say a few things to me. And then when I got malaria, I'd actually got it from southern Thailand. And I arrived in this monastery that I wanted to stay with my teacher. And I just started to feel really terrible. And I thought I was going to die, you know. I remembered I'd had malaria before and I knew the symptoms, and, you know, it's just terrible. And then I eventually kind of overcome that. And I tried to do sitting meditation, mindfulness of breath, but I was so skinny. You know, I was just like, I'd sit there, you know, I was much skinnier than now. I'm pretty skinny now, but I was much skinnier then. I'd sit there and rather than being mindful of my breath, all I could be mindful of was my heartbeat as my body rocked backwards and forwards, because I was so thin that my heartbeat was going like this and I'd be kind of rocking backwards and forwards. So I didn't get much peace with mindfulness of breath. The only thing that would give me peace was when I did 5 recollections. That's a practice in the teachings of the Buddha. The 5 recollections are, I'm of the nature to age. I've not got beyond aging. I'm of the nature to have illness. It is the way of things. The body is a body. It has illness. I'm of the nature to die. I've not got beyond death. All that is mine, beloved and pleasing, shall one day be parted from me, shall one day vanish. And the last section is a little kind of phrase about karma. About equanimity. I'm the owner of my actions. Literally it goes, I'm the owner of my karma, but karma means actions. I'm the owner of my actions or decisions. Heir to my actions, born of my actions, related to my actions, abide supported by my actions. Whatever actions I shall do, of those actions I shall be the heir. That hit a point where I could just kind of drop into the realities of life. This is it, you know. This is the way it is. We all are subject to this. And it cultivated equanimity. And it wasn't like the near enemy of equanimity. It was a survival strategy, and it kind of worked. It was like I was forced into a corner, having to face reality, and that's what helped me. And I notice equanimity comes about regularly when I go to funerals, for example. Or, and my brother died, both my parents died many years ago. My brother died 10 years ago. And this, you know, going through that dying process, it's not, death is suffering. You know, it's one of those inevitable aspects of life. It's a lot of dukkha. It's not only our death, but just being around death is difficult. Like going through the process of my brother having cancer and the months of it, and seeing all the distress that it caused to the family. The way I cope with that is to stand in the middle. Not without compassion. It's not the near enemy of equanimity. It's connected with compassion. It's connected with loving kindness, appreciative joy. It's to stand in the middle, to be peaceful, to be at peace with this. So, some ways we can cultivate it. Actually, I'll just say this. Equanimity is a very interesting quality. It comes up in a number of places in this Buddhist system, in the Buddhist meditative system. You may have heard me speaking about the 7 factors of awakening. I just briefly mentioned them twice, I think. They're a subgroup of the areas of mindfulness in the 4th foundation. But they also a mix of insight and serenity, and culminating in equanimity. They are mindfulness, investigation, and energy, which is the insight component. Joy, tranquility, concentration, which is the serenity component. And when they're combined together, they result in equanimity. So it's a pretty powerful sequence of events. They're called the 7 factors of awakening because they lead to awakening. And when you're mindful of those qualities, you nourish them. So other areas that equanimity arises in is, well, it is the result of mindfulness practice. It's a result of insight practice. When you practice insight, inquiry, when you practice mindfulness at the 4 foundations of mindfulness, the result is this end state of equanimity. You're kind of peaceful with the way things are. You're accepting the way things are. You're present. You're here. You're stable. You're centered. You're unshaken. And it is also one of the results in the sequence of serenity meditation. So it's pretty cool. And with serenity meditation, we mentioned this a little bit last night, and also we practiced it a little bit this morning. You know how I talked about the jhanas, and there's various features of each of the first 4 jhanas, and I know I talked a little about the other 4 jhanas. I didn't go into them in much detail, mainly because I'm not very familiar with that. But the first 4, the first jhana, the main feature of that is you're still thinking, but joy, like this bubbly energy coming up, sometimes dramatic energy, sometimes just kind of subtle things. So that's the feature of the first jhana. A feature of the second jhana is sukha, or happiness. And it's a little bit toned down from this quality of effervescent bubbliness, joy that's kind of moving through your body, kind of really energetically. It's a little bit toned down, but it's still very uplifting. And I often feel it around here, and people feel it. Generally, it's felt around this part of the body, like joy and happiness is from your heart. The next jhana, one feature of it is a kind of contentment. So it's even a little bit more toned down and more refined than happiness. It's kind of it's just happiness. It's happiness. It's got a uplifting quality about it. And it is mixed with more of the flavours around equanimity. But it's a satisfaction. You're just content. You don't feel like you need anything to be who you are. You're just content, satisfied. The feature of the 4th jhana is equanimity, which is this, it's not effervescent, it's not bubbly, but it is uplifting in some respects. It's not overwhelmingly happy, it is just stable, but not in a flat sense, not in a sense that, you know how when you get depressed you get kind of flat, you don't care? Not that sort of sense. That's more like what could be called the near enemy of equanimity. Kind of this flat, I don't care, I couldn't be bothered. It's not that. It's this stable, luminous, bright presence, stability. So equanimity is really cool. So you can cultivate it in all sorts of different ways. You can cultivate it with reflection, as I was just talking about. I reflect on aging, sickness, death, and the realities of life. I find I cultivate it in the marketplace sometimes, in life. You sit at railway station, or more like airports for me. You can sit at an airport and you see people coming and going, and you tune into them and you think, they are. The reason they are the way they are is because of a bunch of things coming together, and also, their decisions in life. And they're kind of neutral people, and you just look at them. They are the way they are. They're just the way they are. And they go out of your life, and that's it. That sense of things are just the way it is. It is the way it is. It's come about because of natural causes and effects, consequences. Sometimes I do it like that. Sometimes I reflect. Sometimes I think of times when I've been really peaceful, really calm. Or I think of people that are really peaceful and calm, or equanimous. Just like we did this morning, you know how I invited you to think of happiness? Well, you think of peace, because that's a quality of equanimity. You can think of a peaceful place or peacefulness in your heart, and you make it, you kind of create it, and you make it your reality by bringing attention to it, you feed into it. This is the positive aspect of attention. You know, what we attend to becomes our reality. Remember that statement? You can create that, so in that respect you can cultivate it in that way. And yet another way is by just looking at life, just being mindful in life, watching, not only internally but also externally, the way people's lives are. Watch the news sometimes, if you can. If you can, watch it without getting kind of so caught up in it. And the final way you can cultivate equanimity is through this meditative process, this concentration, where you go through these stages, even if you're not experiencing what people would be describing as, all the features of a technical jhana, like that highly concentrated state. You're emulating it. You're still working towards it, and you can feel a deep peacefulness, just a deep stillness, and that's equanimity. It's pretty cool, and it balances the other qualities. I think that's about enough for tonight's talk.